In this video, I'll be walking you through building an analog clock like this, which tells the current time. Currently, the time is 7:42 p.m. and currently looks like 7:42. This is with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we're going to start with a simple analog clock like this. And then if I should turn on this image here, then we're going to actually add an image background like this to see how perfect our clock is. Analog clocks are exercises that people have been asked in their interviews, so practicing with this can help you improve your skills. So we'll be starting from scratch. We have a blank page. This is the HTML we're going to begin with. We have this div with an ID of clock and a class of clock. We have this other div which we're going to call seconds hand. This div which is going to be the minutes hand. This div which is going to be the hours hand, and this div which is going to be the center, which is going to be the dot at the center of the clock. And with our CSS, we can begin doing some things. So the first thing, I'm going to have my clock, and I'll give this a width of 250 pixels and a height of 250 pixels. You can use any values, of course. Give this a border radius of 50%. Give this a border of 2 pixels solid black, and we'll give this a position of relative because some of the children in this clock are going to have absolute and want to keep this clock as the boundary of those other elements. And lastly, I'm just going to give this a margin of 0 and auto. And now if I should refresh, I have the clock here. For the y-axis, let me give this 80 pixels just so that there is some space at the top. Okay, so we have this clock outline. Then now for the center, or maybe I can call this center of clock. I think that's a better name. So back in this HTML, instead of just center, I'll have center of clock. So here I'm going to give this a position of absolute, and I'll give this an insert of 0. Insert is top, right, bottom, left. And then I can give this a margin of auto so that it will be positioned at the center. A width of 10 pixels, height of 10 pixels. You could use any values. A border radius of 50%. And lastly, we give this our background color of black. So now we should have the dot at the center here. Now let's talk about the seconds hand, minutes hand, and the hours hand. Here I'm going to have seconds hand, minutes hand, hours hand. I'm going to style all of this together, that I want all of them to have a position of absolute, a height of 50%. So that's going to be half the cycle. That's the radius in this case. And then for the width, I'm just going to give all of them 3 pixels for now. I'm going to fix that in a second. Then I would also give insert of 0. I like giving insert of 0 when I want to do some auto margins. So now when I have the insert of 0, I can do something like margin left auto. Coming back to the HTML, instead of leaving the class as just second, minute, and hour, I'm actually going to have seconds hand. I think that's a much better name. Hours hand, something like this. Okay. Now if I should come here and give this a background color of black, you're going to see that we have the seconds hand, minutes hand, and hours hand here. By using margin left auto, then it positions it by the right, so it uses as much margins as it can on the left. But then if I should also come here and do margin right auto, then we're going to have equal margins on the left and the right, and now you can see the hand is placed just at the center. But then in my case, I'm not going to give the divs the background colors. Instead, I want to give the spans the background colors, because with the div is exactly 50%, but then I don't want my second, minute, or hours hand to go from here directly to the edge. I want there to be some space here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to style the spans of all of these elements. So I'm going to use the is pseudo class. The is pseudo class allows you to basically have a group of selectors of which anyone can match. So in this is pseudo class, I can pass the seconds hand, minutes hand, and hours hand. And then here I'm going to have span. So basically what I'm saying here is either seconds hand span, or minutes hand span, or hours hand span. So this is where I'm going to put the background color. And of course, the span is going to have a display of block because by default it has inline. And then I'm going to have a width of 100% and a height of 100%. Okay, and now when I refresh, we basically have the same thing because the span is just as big as the div. So now if I should come here for this seconds hand, minutes hand, and hours hand, and I put a padding top of 50 pixels, for example, what you can see is we now have that space here. But instead of having the same padding top for all of the hands, I'm going to have it differently. So for the seconds hand, I want to have a padding top of 20 pixels. For the minutes hand, I want to have a padding top of 10 pixels. And then for the hours hand, I want to have a padding top of 30 pixels. Also, I don't want the minutes hand, second hands, and hours hand to all have the same widths. I want to give them different widths. For the minutes hand, I'm going to keep the width as 3 pixels. For the seconds hand, I'm going to keep the width as 1 pixel. And for the hours hand, I'm going to keep the width as 5 pixels. And now if I should refresh, you can see that we have hands of different sizes and different paddings. Well, we have everything positioned directly at the 12 o'clock, but let's move things around. This is where I'm going to use transform. So here in this seconds hand, I can use a transform, rotate, and I'm going to rotate this by, let's just say 30 degrees. And now you're going to see the seconds hand rotate. But then I want it to rotate with this point at this point here. I don't want it rotating at the center. So here I can change the transform origin. By default, the transform origin is center. So my rotate is going to apply with the center somewhere around here. But then I want the transform origin to be bottom, so that it's going to transform with this place here and rotating. So now if I should refresh, you can see the rotation now happens at the bottom. I'm going to take this from here and put it for all of the hands because that's what I want. Now, just one useful tip. The reason why I have this center of clock here is because if I should remove the center of clock, you're going to notice that all of the hands are not exactly at the same point because they all have different sizes. So to sort of hide that and as well make our clock look nicer, I put this center of the clock so that way it covers what is there and you can't really notice that all of the hands are not at the same point. Okay, the seconds hand goes by 30 degrees. Let's say the minutes hand goes by 10 degrees and the hours hand goes by 180 degrees. And now we have a clock looking like this: the hours hand, the minutes hand, and the seconds hand. I also want to give each of these hands different colors. I don't want all of them to be background color of black. So here I'm going to say for the seconds hand, I want the span to be orange. Hours hand, I want the span to be green. And for the seconds hand, I want the background to be light blue. So if I should refresh, something is missing for the hours hand. Oh, sorry, this should be minutes hands, not second hands. Okay, so we have this looking like this now. Well, this is just the HTML and CSS part. Now let's go to the JavaScript part where we can make all of this dynamic. The first thing I'm going to do is to query these elements, these 3 divs here. So first I'm going to get my hours hand, which is going to be document.get elements by ID hours hand. Then I'm going to do the same thing for minutes hand, seconds hand, seconds hand. Then I'm going to have a function which I call update time, and when this function is called, it's going to update our analog clock to the right time. So I can just come to this style.css and just comment all of these rotates so that by default the clock starts from the center or from 12 o'clock. In this update time, I'm going to get the current time, and I do that by calling the dates constructor. Then here I can get the current hours. So this will be current time dot get hours. Then I'm going to get the current minutes, which is going to be get minutes. Current seconds, which is going to be get seconds. And if I should log all of this so you see what it looks like, we have the current hours, current minutes, current seconds. By the way, in my HTML, I'm linking the JavaScript here. So now if I come here and I call update time and I refresh, you can see the current hours is 19, current minutes 56, current seconds 17, and at the top here, yep, that's the current time. Okay, now that we have these values, the next goal would be to convert the values to degrees, because currently the current hours can be from 0 to 12, right? Or in the case of a 24-hour time, it can be from 0 to 24. But then in a cycle, there are a total of 360 degrees. So we have to convert, for example, 5 to the equivalent in degree. Because with this current hours, for example, if I should say hours hand dot style dot set property, let's say I want to set the transform and I want to set it to rotate, then here I'll interpolate the current hours, and then I have DEG here, degree. No, the DEG should be in the parentheses. Now, if I should refresh, you can see the current time is 20, but because the hours hand only goes by 8 degrees, then we have the hand showing here at the 8 degree mark instead of somewhere here where 8 o'clock is. So here we have to convert this from the normal hours to the degrees equivalent. So I'm going to have a function here which I'm going to call convert hours to degree, and this is going to take the hours, and the idea is going to be 12 hours makes 360 degree, right? Because 12 o'clock is 360 degree. Then the question is now going to be X hours makes Y degree. So here to get the degree, we have const degree equals to 360 divided by 12 multiplied by the hours. And then coming back to the top, we can now have hours degree, and we call convert hours to degree, and we pass current hours. Then I can use the hours degree for the rotate here. Refresh this doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because I didn't return the degree. Okay, so now if I should refresh this, you can see that this way we now calculate the degrees required for the hours here. We can also try this with a different value. So we know that the current hours is going to be 8 or it's going to be 20. So let's just say I add 3 hours to it. So this is going to be 23, which means 11 o'clock. If I refresh this now, you can see that the degrees for 11 o'clock is calculated here. Let's take this back to 8. Now we're going to do the same thing for the minutes and the seconds. And as you know, with the minutes, you have from 0 to 60, actually from 0 to 59. And for the seconds, you also have from 0 to 59. So we have to convert that 0 to 59 to degrees. So here I'm going to have my function convert 60s, let's just give it like this, to degree. So this is going to take the value, which can be minutes or seconds. And here I'm going to have degree is equals to 360 divided by 60, then multiplied by the value. And then I can return the degree here. And then back to this place, I can now have the minutes degree. Then I call convert 60s to degree. Seconds degree. And then I call convert 60s to degree. Here I'll pass the current minutes, and here I'll pass the current seconds. I'm going to update the hands here. So I'll have the minutes hand, style.set property, and then I pass the minutes degree. And then I have the seconds hand, and here I'm going to pass the seconds degree. Now if I come here and refresh, currently the time is 7 past 8. So this is what 7 past 8 looks like, and this is where the second hand is. If I should refresh, this is where the second hand is. Now if I just keep refreshing, you can see the second hand moving as the second increases. Of course, we also want to automate this instead of always refreshing, but this is what we have so far. Now there is something else we would need to do for these hours to degree, and I'll show you that in a second, but let's just keep it as it is. So to automate this is where we can use the set timeout API from the browser. So when you refresh the page, firstly, we're going to call update time, because, well, I'll show you what would happen if we don't call update time the first time. So here I can now have my set timeout, and in this set timeout, I'm going to say every 1 second, I want you to call update time. So now if I should refresh, you can see everything was at 12 o'clock before it's adjusted to the normal time. We don't want that flash of 12 o'clock. We want the current time to already be on the clock. So that is why we call update time here, so that when you refresh, you already get the updated time. Now, you're not supposed to use set timeout here. You're supposed to use set interval. That was a mistake, because with set timeout, it only calls it once after a delay, but with set interval, it calls it at every interval that you specify, which in this case is 1 second. So now if I should refresh, every 1 second we have this. You have the second hand moving. The hours hand is currently at 8. It gets to 9 when it's 9 o'clock, and the minute hand is where it is. Now we can verify this by putting an image background in the clock, and I got that from the Google image here. So I just searched for clock without hands. I got a bunch of them. Here I have this one from Pinterest, which I'm going to use. So I'm going to copy the image address, go back to my clock, and then in this HTML, I'll come here to have a div, and I'll just have clock background. Then here I'm going to have my image, where the source is going to be the image address I just copied. Well, you can see the clock background here, and it's not where I want it to be. So let's style it. So here I'm going to have the clock background, which, as you would already expect, would have a position of absolute and inset of 0. And then for the image, I want this to have a width of 100% and a height of 100%. So it is just as big as the clock background container. So now if I should refresh this, we now have the clock showing like this. But another thing I can do is for the clock background, I can have a transform where I scale it by 1.2 just so it is bigger. This works fine, and you can see that it actually works. We have 8 o'clock and the minute is currently at 11. So this is the degree for 11. If I come here and I increase the current minutes by, let's say, by 10, and I refresh, you can see this is what an increase in 10 minutes is, from 11 to 21. But let's take this back. Now, the one thing left to do here is, as you can see, the minutes is currently at 12, but the hours hand still stays on 8. The hours hand only gets to 9 when it is 9 o'clock. But then I would want to improve this by making sure that the hours hand also moves a bit until it gets to 9. It shouldn't just stay here until it's 9 o'clock. Now for that, I can go to this convert hours to degree where we receive the hours, but then we also receive the minutes. And then we're now going to calculate the total hours. So in this case, the total hours is going to be 8 plus maybe 0.5 or 0.6. That's going to be 8.6, because at this point, the hours is not exactly 8. The hours is actually 8 point something because it's almost getting to 9. So here for this total hours, I'm now going to add hours plus minutes divide by 60. If the minutes is 30, for example, that's going to be hours plus 0.5, which means this is going to be currently at 8.5 hours. So when I get the total hours like this, then I can do 360 divided by 12 multiplied by total hours, where I take account of the minutes. And now if I should refresh, I haven't yet passed the minutes to this function. That's why things messed up. So here, when I call convert hours to degree, I'm going to pass current hours and as well also pass current minutes. Okay, now that I pass it to this function, when I refresh now, you can see the hours hand is not exactly at 8 anymore, but it's between 8 and 9. And if I should come to this current minute and let's just hard code a value like 30. Let's say the current minute is 30. You can see the minute is currently at 30 and the hours hand is here. If I put the current minute at 59, you're going to see that this is almost exactly at 9, even though it visually looks like it's already at 9. So that's just a little addition you can do with this clock just to make it more accurate. But then I refresh now, our set interval is running, which calls update time, and every second the JavaScript is calculating all of this and updating the DOM for the seconds hand, the minutes hand, and the hours hand. And there are more ways you can improve this with colors or whatever you want to do, but I hope that this demo showed you a couple of things you can do with CSS and as well with JavaScript in achieving a solution like this, or whatever solution you might want to achieve in an interview or in your project. Let me know in the comments if you like videos like this where we go over some interview questions, and you can also share links to some of those interview questions and I'll try to make videos on them. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and as well give it a like, and see you in my next video.